All right, we have some breaking news from the NFL. The Carolina Panthers are benching quarterback Bryce Young just 2 weeks into the season. That is the very latest from our lead NFL insider, Jonathan Jones. Veteran quarterback Andy Dalton will get the start against the Raiders this Sunday on CBS. How the move comes with Carolina off to an 0-2 start, having scored a combined 13 points. Young has thrown 3 interceptions and 0 touchdowns this season. Carolina, if you remember, traded 2 first-round picks along with DJ Moore to move up to number 1 in last year's draft to select Bryce Young. We're rolling the clocks back to March 4th of 2023. Our very own Rick Spielman, one of our draft analysts, this is his perception of Bryce Young pre-draft back in 2023, saying, I think he has a lot of Patrick Mahomes style to him, and by that I mean he is one of the best off-schedule throwers that I've seen coming out of the collegiate game. He then went on to say he does a great job for a small quarterback with his vision down the field, his anticipation, and the way he throws the ball, and he throws receivers open. All right. We're going to welcome on Pete Prisco.
Oh, my God.
Pete Prisco, Ryan Wilson, Rick Spielman. Pete, we had to let you just get your laugh there. And I'm going to start with you, Pete, because when you're reading that, what Rick read there, pre-2023 draft round Bryce Young, now we're, of course, moving forward, and Bryce Young has been benched 2 weeks into this season. He's off to a 2-16 start as a starter. Is this something you were expecting, at least this early on in the season?
No, not at all. I figured you'd let him play through it or try to play through it. This is way early to give up on the #1 overall pick, particularly since you gave up so many assets to go get him. Now, having said that, this regime didn't draft him. This coach didn't draft him. So it's easier to make a change like that. But you know what? You put up that Rick Spielman quote. You forgot the best one, where he compared him to, made a combination between Patrick Mahomes and Steph Curry. That's who he said he was. He was a combo of Patrick Mahomes and Steph Curry. We laughed back then. We're laughing even more now.
Oh, my God, Pete. Yeah, you're grouchy this morning. You must have had a long Sunday in the studios there. All right, I just wrote what I saw, and I spent some time with that kid, and I won't even get into Will Levis because that's a whole nother story we can go through on some bonehead stuff that he's doing, but it is painful to watch Bryce Young. All of the things at least I saw in college, was able to see because I was down there, it hasn't translated to the NFL. He looks lost. There's no rhythm to the offense. He's seeing ghosts literally in the pocket, outside the pocket. He has no accuracy, playing with no confidence, no savvy, everything that he's seen in college. And for whatever reason, and I don't know the reason for this, I think it's good they sat him because it really is painful to watch on Sunday the way this offense is operating. But don't be surprised. Like, it's only year 2. Don't be surprised if maybe he's a success story like a Baker Mayfield. Maybe like a Sam Darnold's doing right now in the first 2 weeks up in Minnesota. So don't throw him out yet, but I do agree they have to sit him because it's just painful to watch this offense.
Jacqueline, it's a sad day and with the first pick history here because Bryce has now been benched. You'll notice that Rick has his squeeze ball because he's having to work through some things here. But I think the bigger issue is this. Fit matters. And you can make all the excuses you want for how the offense went last year in Carolina or how it went this year for the first 3 weeks. This is all about Bryce. His footwork is somehow worse now than it was a year ago. He's missing throws he wasn't missing last year, and last year was tough to watch. And Rick and I watched every single snap last year. And I think sitting is best case scenario. Do you bounce back from this? Mac Jones didn't, so I don't know how this is going to play itself out. One of the other takeaways for me is this. And Pete talked about this, and I hate to give Pete credit, but he might be right. Kyler Murray might be the one exception of the undersized quarterback who can do things that regular-sized quarterbacks can also do. Bryce is average in every respect. He's a good athlete, but not a great athlete. He's certainly undersized. He's underweight. Kyler was special yesterday, and we haven't seen that from Bryce since Alabama. So those are the concerns. I think Rick's right. You have to sit Bryce. There's no reason to roll him back out there and let him take a beating and make his wide receivers have to answer for why he's out there dirting balls left and right. And then maybe you reevaluate in a month. Maybe reevaluate next year, excuse me. But there's no reason for him to play in week 3.
Now, Rick and Ryan, you guys are in agreement that this is the right decision to sit him now. You can't let him stay out there. And maybe he does become a success, like you mentioned, Rick, whether it be a Baker Mayfield situation. But Ryan, I want to get into maybe the psyche of this a little bit because if you are Bryce Young, you're being sat. How do you bounce back from that? Because in the back of his mind, he has to be thinking, hey, maybe they're going to look for another quarterback. In your eyes, Ryan, is that kind of the signal that you're seeing? Are we jumping the gun too early and thinking of that the Panthers could be looking for a quarterback come 2025 in the draft?
Jacqueline, hop in the old with the first big time machine to last Thursday when we did a mock draft. I gave Rick the first overall pick because the Panthers were picking. He took a quarterback. So that should give you some indication how far down this road we are. Bryce should be very concerned about losing his job because don't forget, David Tepper, number one, is not patient as an owner. Number two, last year they traded the Caleb Williams pick and a ton of other picks and DJ Moore to trade up and get Bryce when C.J. Stroud was there at number two. So, yeah, he should be very concerned. And you know, Rick talked about it, and certainly Rick, Pete's mentioned it as well. It may be a situation where you have to go somewhere else. Is it too early to give up on Bryce? Yeah, but you also have to win football games. This isn't high school football. This isn't Pee Wee football where you can sort of suck it up and wait it out. Bryce has to play better. Bryce has played worse. Dave Canales has a history of doing well with young and old quarterbacks. We have seen none of that through 2 weeks. I suspect Andy Dalton's going to play better. All those things point to a situation where your young quarterback is either overwhelmed or not fit for the job right now, and you just have to reevaluate. So, yeah, the warning signs are there, the sirens are blaring, and Bryce Young has to figure this out. And I think Rick's right. Sitting is probably in his best interest.
Yep. And I'll follow up with you on that. This puts Dan Moore, he has no other possibility but look for another quarterback in the draft the way Bryce has performed. So, again, he may be a success down the road, but right now, where this Carolina Panthers team is, they're getting ready for the upcoming draft because they don't look like a playoff team. Right now, they look like everybody's homecoming game by the way they played in the first 2 weeks. So I think that it's just logical that they have to look for a future quarterback because more than likely, as it looks like the first 2 weeks, they're going to have the number one overall pick. So guess where I'm spending my time in? Texas. I'm spending my time in Georgia. I'm spending my time out in Colorado, looking at all these top quarterbacks because right now the front office has to have doubt. And Pete's right. This coaching staff or the front office did not draft Bryce Young, but they got to look for the future of this franchise too. And right now, Bryce Young's future with the Carolina Panthers does not look like he's the answer.
Yeah, I'm going to get into it with Pete in just a moment about Bryce Young's future. But, Rick, I want to piggyback really quickly because you talked about, hey, if I'm them, I'm going to be spending some time in Georgia, maybe checking out Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, albeit he is injured right now. But you got Arch Manning not too far behind. Who is the answer? Who are some potential quarterbacks they could be looking for in that next upcoming draft, Rick, that could potentially be the future of the Carolina Panthers if Bryce Young, when it's all said and done, really doesn't work out?
Well, Jacqueline, I know you're an avid listener of With the First Pick, so we do talk about all these quarterbacks. And the way Ewers played up in Michigan, you got to say, wow, he looks like the number one guy. You know, Sanders is a very good athlete. It's incredible, makes some incredible throws, but there's some holes. And then Beck, who is the lead dog right now for the first quarterback off the board, hasn't looked as sharp, and he needs to take a step forward. So it's a little mumbly jumbly right now, if I can say that. I think it'll eventually work itself out as we go down through the season. But to me, those are the top three quarterbacks that you have to look at if I'm the Carolina Panthers.
All right, Pete, I want to go back to you because as we all saw at the top of this segment, you are certainly not a Bryce Young apologist by any means. But what do they do in the meantime? Do they sit Bryce Young and work with him a little bit, stick with Andy Dalton for the rest of the season? I mean, there's a lot of things to fix there in Carolina, and there's seemingly a new statistic every single week we can talk about as to why they are so bad. But when you look at the schedule here, Pete, what do they do in terms of Bryce Young, at least for this 2024 season?
Oh, I think the Bryce Young experiment is over in Carolina. I really do. You don't sit him down unless you really believe that's the end of it. And Rick talked about, Baker Mayfield. Bryce Young's play made Baker Mayfield's play in Cleveland look like he was Joe Montana, Dan Marino, and John Elway combined in one. I mean, he's that bad. I don't think there's any recovering from this. I think what you're finding out about Bryce Young, he's a backup quarterback in the National Football League. And when you go back and look at this trade, if you look at it on the surface, just think about it. They traded away all those picks for a 5'9", 175-pound quarterback in a league full of nasty, violent men on the other side of the ball. It was never going to work. It was a bad trade. It will go down in history as one of the worst trades in the history of this league. Terrible decision. Bryce Young's a backup quarterback. There's no resurrecting that career.
Pete,
Jack,
I mean,
good news.
yeah, let me just, Pete, you're throwing the man under. You already buried him 6 feet under the ground. Give the guy a chance to get loosened up here a little bit. He's only 1 year and 2 games into his career, so I understand the points you're making, and they're all very valid points. Huh? I'm saying send him.
Let him play it out.
It's over.
Ryan, I feel like you wanted to follow. You wanted something to say after Pete.
I've been working with Rick for 2 years, and I've never seen him this agitated. But Pete is good at getting the worst out of people. Jacqueline, the good news is I haven't been able to hear Pete this whole segment, so I've had to read his lips, which is probably best case scenario Pete Prisco, but I know exactly what he's saying. And look, we all agree Bryce has not been good. We also all agree that Bryce was really, really, really good at Alabama, and we have not seen that player for 18 games now in Carolina. So he's going to sit on the bench. He's going to have to figure out whether he can get better or if he can't. Dave Canales has a history of getting the most out of these quarterbacks. Bryce's footwork stinks. His ability to get through his read stinks. As Rick noted, he's seen ghosts. All those things have to stop if you want to play in the NFL. Otherwise, you're going to be destined to be a backup for the rest of your career, however long that is. So, not a great day for Bryce Young. Not a great day for with the first pick. Bryce Young fandom. Small victory for Pete Prisco, but what does that mean? And now we have to see if the Carolina Panthers can find a way to get better.
All right, Pete Prisco, Rick Spielman, Ryan Wilson, we certainly appreciated gentlemen joining us as we are following that breaking news out of the NFL. Bryce Young being benched after just 2 weeks in the season. It's going to be Andy Dalton under center there in Carolina. The conversation continues, and it certainly will as it pertains to Bryce Young on the With the First Pick pod with Rick Spielman and Ryan Wilson. You can download, follow, listen wherever you get your pods, or you can scan that QR code. Maybe they'll have Pete on as a guest.
Oh, no.
Hopefully.